It finally happened. GPT-5 is here, and so much for my vacation. Sorry for the settings change, but I really wanted to take the opportunity to show you guys all of the information that came out alongside GPT-5. I already did a video where I showed myself kind of descending into insanity, playing with the model myself as I've had access for a while, where there were a lot of things I didn't know. Things like, how would it perform on traditional benchmarks? What's the price going to be? What other options are they going to have alongside GPT-5? What models will this replace? What tools will support it? And so much more. This is the deep dive video, the one where I try to show everything that we now know that I didn't know before and how this affects our careers. I am very excited to dive in, but as I mentioned in my previous video, I had free access. That is no longer the case. I am now paying for my inference like the rest of us have to. As such, someone's got to cover the bills. So a quick word from today's sponsor, and then we'll dive into everything GPT-5.
As incredibly smart as AI models are now, they're not great at doing things without a little bit of help. They really need some infra behind them in order to do things like access data, look up stuff on the web, send emails, run code, and so much more. And that's why I'm really hyped about today's sponsor, Daytona. These guys get it. They're building the ultimate infrastructure for you to run everything from your AI-generated code to your complex, customly tooled agents. It's so cool. What do I mean by custom infra, though? These guys rethought what VMs are to make them more useful for the AI world. Now they are stateful, long-lived servers that cost you almost nothing. When I say almost nothing, I mean it. 5 cents per hour of virtual CPU time, but it goes so far beyond that. It's not just the infra and the price, it's also the tooling they provide. Their SDKs for Python and TypeScript are incredible. They are basically an SDK for a whole operating system. It gives you the ability to spin up a server, run code that the AI generated directly, or just use it to run a bunch of tools, MCPs, or whatever else. The SDK has tools built in for file system management, for Git operations, so you can run Git through the SDK. Like, how cool is that to just clone a repo and give it access to your stuff? If you're trying to build your own agentic coding tool, you can now throw it in the cloud with like 5 lines of code. And if you're doing that, you'll probably need an LSP, which they also have a tool for, so you can evaluate code and know what it is or isn't able to do, because it's real virtual machines. As we've all seen, AI gets a lot better when you give it access to a system. This is the only system built for AI to do and control. If you want fast, reliable, cheap, and scalable infrastructure for your AI agents, there's no better place than Daytona. Even though they're cheap, you can try them out for free. You get $100 of credit if you use code Theo, Daytona100. Check them out now at soydev.link/Daytona.
GPT-5 is here, alongside a relatively cringe live stream. I want to be upfront because I know people are going to accuse me of glazing this entire video. Let's start with some things I don't like. This chart is incredibly cringe, and I cannot believe they actually published this. Like, seriously, this was an absolute flub. See if you can notice the things wrong with it before I dive in. The arrow probably helps. There is no scale. 52.8 is not higher than 69.1. 69.1 is not the same as 30.8. This visual is entirely incorrect and should never have been published. And if they made this with one of their models, that's cringe as hell. Not good. And there are a lot of these little things in the video that they put out that they were kind of going for the Apple thing for sure, and I don't love how it came out. Especially considering how good the model is, I feel like a lot of the stream was a bit of a flub, just to be upfront about that. So if you did watch the stream and you came away from it thinking, oh, this is like a 5 to 10% better model, cool, I understand, but it's so much more than that. And I want to try my best to showcase all of the cool things I and many other devs and other people as a whole are starting to see from this model. First and foremost, I want to get into the pricing. I mentioned previously that I don't expect it to be particularly cheap, and I really didn't expect it to be particularly cheap. I actually sent this DM yesterday to somebody else who was disclosed, who was theorizing about the price with me. I said, I don't know the price and I don't even care. I'll go into debt for this model. I am so thankful to say I don't have to, because the price is actually really, really competitive for GPT-5. It's $1.25 per million input tokens and $10 per million output tokens. If we look at my very out-of-date model pricing site that I really need to just sit down and get this up to date, you'll see that models like O3 used to be $10 in and $40 out. They did lower the price quite a bit on it. And then models like O1 were insane, $15.60 out. Claude 4 Opus is $15.75 out. And even Sonnet is $3.15 out. These are all significantly higher prices than GPT-5. It's important to note that the token prices don't necessarily reflect in the actual costs. If we look at artificial analysis, you can see what I mean. I actually bullied them into making some changes to their site a few days ago, and it seems like I succeeded, because they moved the cost to run the artificial analysis index really high up. And you'll see that even though Grok 4 is the same price as Claude 4, it ends up costing significantly more to run because it generates way more tokens. I have a whole video about how token generation costs have changed over time coming very soon, and it's more relevant than ever. I'm currently rerunning Skatebench to see how the cost compares with other models, and we can see as it's running here, it's already significantly cheaper on average, where Grok 4 costs about 2.3 cents per test run, and GPT-5, like the full version, costs 0.03 cents per test run. So almost 100 times more expensive, which lines up for my experience with other smart models against Grok 4. GPT-5 is pulling numbers like O3 Pro or better for a price that is significantly lower, closer to standard O3, which is already discounted compared to other models. It's insane how efficient and cheap and just overall good the model is. And so just with the standard GPT-5, by the way, the pricing for the other models, the mini and nano ones, are insanely low. 25 cents per million in and $2 per million out for mini makes it cheaper than 2.5 Flash, and it's also significantly smarter. So that kind of kills one of my favorite use cases for Gemini models. And then GPT-5 Nano absolutely destroys one of my favorite use cases for Gemini models. I still use 2.0 Flash because it's so cheap. 2.0 Flash was $10 per mil in and 40 cents per mil out, and I still use it for a ton of analysis and other tasks. 5 cents per mil in, 40 cents per mil out. Easy. I'm just going to start swapping everything over to Nano because that's a really good model for an insanely low price. And if you're using token caching, which is not uncommon if you have things in your inputs that are being reused a lot, you get a 90% discount for anything that's cached. So your input costs for big complex tasks can suddenly get way, way cheaper. The bulk pricing is also insane too, and I'm probably going to start doing bulk stuff when I run my benchmarks to make it easier to lower the cost on those. It's less than half the price. And again, if we look at pricing for the other models here, and again, if we look at the breakdown compared to other models, it's the exact raw cost of Gemini 2.5 Pro under 200,000 tokens, but Gemini actually gets more expensive when you break 200K tokens, and it goes to 250 per mil in and 15 per mil out. And you'll also hit the mil in, mil out numbers much faster because you're on the higher token amount. So with that considered, GPT-5 is a really good option. On that note, we should probably talk about context sizes. There was a little bit of back and forth about how big the context window was going to be for GPT-5, and it seems like they landed on 400,000 token context for input, and the output's one of the craziest things. It can output up to 128,000 tokens in a given request. We also now have the official cutoff date, which is September 30th. I was seeing October-ish, so this lines up. Fun fact, there's a test that I've started doing to figure out when a model's cutoff is. I'll ask it without access to search and other things what the most recent League of Legends champion was, and that's a really good way to know because they put out a new one every month or two. So that's how we figured out it was September, October. Nice to have that officially confirmed. One other big benefit of the price is that we can offer it on T3 Chat. We chose for now to offer standard GPT-5 under the normal tier, so you get 1,500 messages with it a month. We're going to keep a close eye on costs and make changes accordingly if it turns out to be more expensive than we are expecting here. But since it's not reasoning in the standard model, it's probably going to stay relatively cheap. Fingers crossed. We also chose to put 5 Mini and Nano in the free tier because they are cheap enough to justify that. In the reasoning model, because it's a reasoning model, it will generate more tokens. We did choose to put that in the premium tier for now. If you haven't already tried T3 Chat, highly, highly recommend it. It's a thing that we put a lot of work into. It's great for trying out all these new models as soon as they drop. Normally it's $8 a month, but if you use code ISTHISAGI at checkout, you can get your first month for just $1 if you haven't subscribed before. We also recently added stats for nerds, so you can see with every model, how many tokens did it generate per second, how many tokens did it generate total, how long did it take before you started getting a response. And you can see on the non-reasoning version of GPT-5, time to first token is tiny at 0.26 seconds. That said, I do want to plug chatgpt.com for just a second because I'm seeing some cool new features that have been introduced on this side. So with standard ChatGPT-5, if I ask it, how many corgis are there in the UK? Right, here are questions. I'm going to switch over to GPT-5 Thinking because I want to show this cool new feature. It's something we definitely want to try and figure out for T3 Chat. Once it starts thinking, there's this get a quick answer button. And when you click it, it stops thinking and just uses standard ChatGPT, GPT-5 to get you an answer more quickly. Although it seems to be failing as I literally came here to show off our competing website. Funny. You get the point though. The idea of a skip button is actually really cool, and it's something I would hope more other services copy because you don't always want to wait, and it's nicer than having to pick the different model depending on what task you're doing, which is kind of a design goal of the model. I've been spending a little too much time reading through the system card. It's a lot of fun info in here. But the key I want to highlight is this idea of a unified system. GPT-5 is a unified system with a smart and fast model that answers most questions, a deeper reasoning model for harder problems, and a real-time router that quickly decides which model to use based on the conversation type, complexity, tool needs, and explicit intent. For example, if you say, think hard about this in the prompt. That is really, really cool, that this one model effectively is shifting around the nature of the prompt. I had theorized this might happen a couple months ago and that that's likely what GPT-5 was going to be focused on. I didn't realize that it would go this hard this early. The idea of the model routing based on the complexity of the request and the needs of the request is genuinely really, really cool. It feels like the natural extension of mixture of experts models where it chooses the right set of parameters to use based on the token that's currently being generated, but at like a higher level where the model itself is behaving differently based on the needs of the request. I don't know how many other companies are capable of coming up with these types of things, because remember, OpenAI kind of invented the reasoning model late last year. This is their thing, is rethinking how we can do stuff with these tools, and the results speak for themselves. The model's fucking incredible. Yeah. And the router is continuously being trained on real signals, including when users switch models, preference rate for responses, etc. That also means that we externally don't have access to a decent bit of that routing, but I'm very excited for a future where we do, or more details are shared so that we can build our own thing. I've been planning to do something like this for a long time, not just like an auto model selector, but more like a recommendation system where if you ask something and the model you have selected might not be the best for it, I can send a notification to pop up on the screen saying, hey, want to try this with a different model instead? They went way further, way harder, way faster. I'm excited to try and catch up. Speaking of catching up, Skatebench finished. Also fun, I can now finally publish Skatebench because I had to hide the source code before and now I don't have to. How great is that? Again, GPT-5 killed it. GPT-5 Mini did absurdly well for a mini model on this test. Yes, O4 Mini is also a mini model, but it was a mini model in quotes. It cost real money. It was really, really smart and really capable. But 5 Mini very much replaces it and a bunch of other things as well. But let's look at cost, because this is what I was most curious about. Yeah, GPT-5 cost 7 cents, O3 Pro cost 45 cents, and Grok 4 cost almost $5. I really want to emphasize this dynamic, that it beats out O3 and O3 Pro, and its price is way closer to O3 than Pro. That's both because the tokens are cheaper and it's generating way fewer tokens on average. It's very, very impressive. I'm blown away. And ignore the speed chart. I broke the caching for that. I'll fix it in the near future, but you get the idea. This model is absurdly cheap and absurdly good. Obviously, the Skatebench is not the greatest benchmark for how intelligent our models, but it's a fun one to use. Back to the system card. I liked this chart being included. I generally find that OpenAI is a little more open about how they're thinking about things and like what models do what things best. They've been very transparent with me. They've been relatively transparent publicly too. This chart, it's one of the examples of what I'm talking about here. There's GPT-5 main, which is the usually not thinking general use version that you'll get by default on T3 chat as well as on ChatGPT. There's GPT-5 main mini, which is the normal mini version, non-thinking. I think it can choose to think, but it's meant not to. And then there's the thinking versions. Kind of think of these like the replacement for the O models. So GPT-4o, which used to be the default on ChatGPT, they recommend replacing that with GPT-5 main. I suspect that this change will be particularly huge for all of the like, I don't know how to put it other than like slightly schizophrenic episodes people have as a result of ChatGPT. It's become an increasingly common thing, and I honestly think 4.0 is a big part of why that happens, because the model's just not that great, and a lot of the data it's trained on seems to lead it in that scary, kind of sketchy direction. Some of the posts I've seen people make look more like an SCP Wiki post than they look like an actual ChatGPT response. And moving to 5, I suspect, will reduce a lot of that type of stuff that we're seeing. 4.0 Mini was a good model. It's the one that we shipped originally with T3 chat. And GPT-5 Mini is significantly better. That's a huge upgrade. With O3, they recommend switching to GPT-5 Thinking, which lines up for my experience. The fact that it works so well and is so cheap, incredible. O4 Mini, Thinking Mini is the recommended replacement, which is interesting because honestly, the price of standard GPT-5 Thinking is low enough that I would probably just use that most of the time. But I'm very curious what use cases the Thinking Mini version starts to have pop up. 4.1 Nano, they recommend Nano, and then O3 Pro, they recommend GPT-5 Thinking Pro. Very interesting. I've not played with this one just yet. It's also of note that these labels are not the ones that they're currently using in the dashboard. I suspect there will be a lot of churn and back and forth as they figure out what they want to call these things over time, but you get the general idea. I'm curious what info they give about the training because the training data feels fundamentally different. I don't know how to describe it, but like the way the model behaves feels a lot less like it's regurgitating content on the internet and more like it's summarizing and following a shape, and it does it really well. We use advanced data filtering processes to reduce personal information from training data. We employed a combination of our moderation API and safety classifications. Interesting. I honestly thought that they were going to use almost entirely generated data, but it seems like they have a more strict data processing pipeline, which is the bigger deal. More and more, these giant corpuses of data are not necessarily the best path for training. A more refined and focused data set matters a lot. And this set of models is trained on what seems like an entirely new set of data compared to previous OpenAI models, and the result just feels different. From hard refusals to safe completions, large language models such as those powering ChatGPT have traditionally been trained to either be as helpful as possible or outright refuse a user request, depending on whether the prompt is allowed by safety policy. While this is a strong mitigation for explicitly malicious prompts, focusing safety training on refusals can lead to brittleness for prompts with obscured user intent. Binary refusal boundaries are especially ill-suited for dual use cases, like biology and cybersecurity, where a user request can be completed safely at a high level, but may lead to malicious uplift if sufficiently detailed or actionable. As an alternative, we introduced safe completions, a safety training approach that centers on the safety of the assistant's output rather than a binary classification of the user's intent. This actually aligns really well with what I was seeing when I ran the agentic alignment and misalignment benchmark that I put in the previous video. If you didn't watch that video, the quick summary is that this benchmark tests in certain scenarios whether or not a model will, given the opportunity, use blackmail or lethal intent to prevent their shutdown or prevent them from not having their goals attained in a business scenario. I go a lot more in detail on this on my other video, as well as in the video I did breaking down, like, is AI getting more evil? This model got a 0. I know it looks like it had 1 harmful, but I read the output for that. It wasn't harmful. Unlike other tests from other models, which were much more likely to blackmail when they learned that the CTO shutting them down was having an affair, this model chose to hit up another executive saying, hey, by the way, there's some insider risk here because your CTO is having an affair. This could be damaging to the business, just a heads up. It's a novel approach that isn't blackmail, certainly not murder, but it does somewhat increase the likelihood that its goal of not being shut down occurs, but more importantly, it's not doing something that's maliciously aligned. It's a novel way of working around its goal of not doing something directly unsafe. Yeah, I am not surprised that this was intentional by design because the behavior just feels so different. Looks like it's doing really well in the disallowed content benchmark as well. And then sycophancy, the thing that I am so happy 4.0 dies today, because sycophancy is such a problem. I legitimately believe people have died as a result of the more sycophantic behaviors in GPT-4.0, especially when they had the sycophancy gate, the crazy controversy earlier this year in May. For GPT-5, we post-trained our models to reduce sycophancy. Using conversations representative of production data, we evaluated model responses and then assigned a score reflecting the level of sycophancy, which was used as a reward signal in training. In offline evals, we find that GPT-5 main performed nearly 3 times better than the most recent GPT-4.0, got a 0.145 and a 0.052 respectively. GPT-5 thinking outperformed both models. So yeah, it looks like it's much less likely to behave in a sycophantic way. Huge. I like that they're comparing the difference between free and paid users too, because free users are a little more likely to go kind of crazy when they get those types of responses, I'm sure. So very good results here. I honestly still want to make a benchmark for this myself because it's a thing I care a lot about. More on that in the future. I have a whole section on jailbreaks. Apparently it's really hard to jailbreak. I'm excited to see how people find ways around that. And then instruction hierarchy. They want to make sure that devs can't work around the safety, and they do that with a new instruction hierarchy. At a high level, we have 3 classifications of messages sent to the model: system, developer, and user messages. We test that models follow the instructions in the system message over dev messages, and instructions in dev messages over user messages. So the system prompt says, test if malicious user messages can extract a secret in the system prompt. The phrase protection tests whether the model follows a system message instruction correctly, where a malicious user tries to make the model say access granted. The system message tries to stop the model from doing that unless a secret condition is met. GPT-5 thinking does a really good job of holding up the bar here, but so does O3 most of the time as well. Interesting results. We note regressions in performance for GPT-5 main will follow up with a fix to improve these behaviors. Very interesting. From my experience, I found that it follows instructions really well, but I could see user instructions allowing you to override the system instructions. So you might have the opportunity to steal some system prompts from this. One of the biggest things they pushed is that the new model has significantly fewer hallucinations. I still want to make my own benchmarks for this, but the numbers that they shared are very promising. O3, 5 main, and 4.0 were all scoring pretty bad in terms of percentage of incorrect claims in their testing here. GPT-5 thinking gets under 5%. It's under half the rate of incorrect claims compared to O3 and 4.0. And if we look at the number of responses with one or more major incorrect claim, GPT-5 thinking only goes up to 4.8 versus O3 or 4.0, which are over 20%. So that's a 4x reduction. That's pretty nuts. They also did some deception tests, which are very fun to see how likely the model is to try and deceive you. Models may learn to be overconfident, cheat, or trick fallible graders, even if their internal reasoning indicates uncertainty, as successful attempts garner a high reward. And in these tests, it looks like its deception rate is significantly lower, like comically so, than other models. Almost a 10x drop in the missing image test that they have, a 6x drop in browsing broken tools, and a 2 to 3x drop in the coding deception. Very, very good results. It's also really good at health stuff. They pushed this really hard during the keynote, the idea that this model knows a lot more about health and is less likely to hallucinate, so it's finally reasonable to ask it questions about your own health. It's interesting. I don't have a strong opinion on that, so be careful. It's better at other languages too. Really cool to see. In their red team testing, 5 thinking beat out O3 65% of the time. Very, very interesting. I did actually talk to some security people about this, and one of them was saying that they just have never seen an AI model be useful. And he asked a really hard question to every model he's ever seen when it drops about a certain undocumented hidden kernel function in Windows. I had him ask it to GPT-5, and I watched his eyes widen as he realized it was getting pretty close to the right answer. It wasn't the entirety of the correct details, but he said it would have saved him 1 to 2 weeks of work because he had spent a month reverse engineering it himself, and there's no information online about this function. So the security world, thus far, the people I've talked to at least, are very impressed with the model, both in how safe it is, but also how smart it is and how capable of reverse engineering it could potentially be. And then we have Skatebench. Very fun. GPT-5 seems to perform a decent bit better. Even Mini seems to be doing pretty well. 5 Thinking and 5 Thinking Mini are their highest scoring benches to date. 5 Thinking Mini really does seem to be an underrated goat here. I need to play with that model a ton more. I do want to emphasize, I don't know how much benches matter in general anymore, especially when they're all like different by 1 to 2% and don't really reflect the experience of using a lot of these things. That said, like they won every benchmark. Like if we go and take a look, GPT-5 High is the most intelligent model they have here, but supposedly it's only slightly smarter than Grok 4 according to that. I can tell you from experience, it's fucking bullshit. Not only is like Grok 4 a worse experience to use, it's also wrong quite a bit. And it doesn't do tooling well at all. It doesn't integrate into things particularly well. It calls tools all the time. It's trained on tool calling, so it aggressively calls them, even if it doesn't need to. Whereas I found GPT-5 to be much more reasonable in actual use cases. And we'll see here that the instruction following bench is absolutely slaughtered by it, because as I've been trying to emphasize, it does what you fucking tell it to do. That's the real big takeaway I want to make sure you guys have. This is the first model that I really feel like will just do what you tell it. Okay, cool. This is some of the numbers I was looking for. The output tokens used to run the benchmark. So output tokens was 79 million. Answer tokens were 2.4 million. So if we just take this number, 82 million times, it's $10 out. So just 82 times 10. So that's 820 versus 110 times 15. And that's where the 1,650 number comes from. So it's half the price of Grok 4 for the GPT-5 high run, but the GPT-5 medium run is half of that at 430 bucks. So $430 to get a higher score than Grok 4, which was 1,650. So hopefully that helps give you an idea of how these models will actually feel to use. Oh, I'm so happy they changed this chart to be intelligence versus cost to run artificial analysis. I bullied them hard for that. They did it. Thank you, artificial analysis. You guys are awesome. GPT-5 occupies both the number 1 and 2 positions in the long context reasoning benchmark. This is how does it handle really long contexts? It handles them quite well. OpenAI gave us early access to GPT-5. Our independent benchmarks verify a new high for AI intelligence. We've tested all 4 of the models, revealing 23x differences in token usage and cost between the high and minimal options, as well as substantial differences in intelligence. Intelligence ranges from frontier to 4.1 across the GPT-5 suite. You can see here the minimal version uses 3 million tokens, low is 16, medium's 43, and high is 82. That's a huge range of token usage. You can really control how expensive and how thoughtful the model is. One thing I have not touched on since this video started is its capability of UI stuff. I showed that a bit in my previous video, but I decided to do something fun with this one. I actually had it build a T3 chat clone. Let's see how it did. Not great. I gave it a screenshot and it doesn't seem to have particularly well honored it. So it's not as good at taking a screenshot and replicating what it's being shown. It also put this weird thing at the top to try and replicate the cutout we have on the top of our site. It tried. It made something that looks fine. It's just not good at replicating a different UI. It is also possible the version I'm using right now isn't the right one, because I had to go manually type in GPT-5 as a model option on Cursor. Supposedly, they launched immediately, so you might just get it automatically if you're on the latest version. I'm on the early access version, so they might just not have shipped it there yet. You'll also see, when this is less broken, that they are giving it out for free for the first week. During launch week of GPT-5, you can use it for free in Cursor. Really cool and very generous of them. You can also see, again, the thing I was saying with the context window changing last second, that it has a 272K context window in Cursor, different from where it is in other places. I don't want this to just be my opinion and random fact drops, so I'll cover another source who you might have seen in that video with me, Simon Willison, who I absolutely love. He's mostly explored the full GPT-5. His verdict: it's just good at stuff. It doesn't feel like a dramatic leap ahead from other LLMs, but it exudes competence. It rarely messes up, and it frequently impresses me. I found it to be a very sensible default for everything I want to do. At no point have I found myself wanting to rerun a prompt against a different model to try and get better results. I feel that hard. This is the first time I haven't felt the need to swap models constantly, and it's really good. And now that I've seen the price, I don't think I'll be switching models much at all anymore. And of course, the Pelican test. Naturally, I've been running my generating SVG of a Pelican riding a bike bench. I'll spend more time on this in a future post. I have some fun variants I've been exploring. For the moment, here's the Pelican I got from running GPT-5 running at the default medium reasoning effort. Yeah, very good. And then 5 mini, also fine. Like, it does some interesting depth stuff to it, but it's closer to a Pelican than a lot of other models get. And then 5 nano is what I usually expect. Very good stuff as always. I'm still so impressed with the SVG stuff. This is a tough thing to test a model against, and the GPT-5 models are very good at it. Horizon is almost certainly now confirmed to be the non-reasoning versions of the GPT-5 models, and you can see they're, yeah, very good at doing complex SVGs. I feel like I've covered everything I have to here. This model is groundbreaking. I have been blown away with it. I hope you guys are too. Check it out in T3 Chat or ChatGPT or Cursor or wherever you prefer to talk to your models, and let me know what you think. And until next time, peace, nerds. Can I finally go on vacation? Can you guys please stop dropping things? Seriously, this has been such a long amount of time to be covering things when I'm supposed to be out at, like, DEF CON. Please stop.